It's time for a new evolution in raising golfers, one that doesn't involve headaches, tears, or heading down the path of unknown. Whether you're trying to introduce children to the game of golf, help them play competitively, or play at a collegiate level, you're in the right place. This show is for any parent, player, or coach who wants to build a better team at home and on the golf course. This is the Raising Golfers Podcast.
All right, another fantastic spring week. Having some good time playing some golf. I've been coaching some fun classes with all types of golfers from all the way down from age 2 all the way up to some senior golfers, beginners, experienced players, low handicappers. Mixed bunch. Been having a good time out here in San Diego and hope you have been as well. Golf's mental game is something that is talked about a lot these days. And I would say one person that comes to mind right away is Hideki Matsuyama, who just won the 2021 Masters. And from what's mentioned by other players on tour is how hard his work ethic is, and also how he's able to control his emotions no matter what happens on the golf course. I think that's important for us to think about and take away. Today, we're going to have our first mental golf coach on the podcast, Josh Nichols from Foundations Mental Performance.
Building the habit to be able to highlight the good things and see the good things and actually list them. And once you list them, you see them there on paper or on the computer screen of, I did those 3 things well today, whether it was a birdie or a good bounce back or a good workout, or I hung out with friends and I saw someone I hadn't seen in a while, or I went and worked, I did carts at the golf course, I made a little money. Whatever it is, like, you did good things.
Josh grew up in the game of golf and went on to play college golf. He improved drastically under the tutelage of his coach, Robert Linville, both with his swing improvements and even more so on the mental game. As Josh stepped away from playing, he began to groom up-and-coming golfers on the mental game and help them learn what he learned along the way. I'm excited for this conversation because I know it's going to help me both with my golf game and my personal life as well, and I think it will for you too. So sit back, listen, and let's enjoy this episode with Josh. All right, Josh, I'm so excited, and welcome to the Raising Golfers podcast.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, today's chat's going to be really interesting because what we're going to talk about is something that I haven't had the pleasure of doing yet on the podcast, which is talking a little bit more about the mental side of the game with an expert like yourself, and also particularly with how that can tie in with junior golfers.
Yeah, expert is maybe a stretch, but I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of the players I work with are junior players, so it's definitely an area of expertise for me, at least over the last couple of years. And of course, I was a junior golfer, so I'd like to think I have some decent opinions in the area.
Let's hear where this all started. How did you get into coaching the mental side of golf?
Yeah, so I've told this story a fair number of times, so I hope I have it down decently and concisely. But I to take it back to college golf, I am kind of prior, junior golf. So from the time I was 12 on, I wanted to play in the PGA Tour. I wanted to be a professional golfer. So, from then through college and after, that was all I cared about. So I went to Appalachian State. I'll get a degree, but really, I'm just trying to get better at golf. It was the school that wanted me with the best um, scholarship offer and just all around best opportunity for me, that I thought this will help me get better at golf. And as is most people's case, they don't get, dramatically better during college. They don't get as good as they want to be. So I moved back into my parents' house after college and continued to work on it, and had the comfort of knowing that my parents were going to support me for as long as I wanted to do it. Really, it was kind of the way we talked about it. And so over the next 4 years, I'd say I just was working on it, practicing, but still really not getting where I wanted to be. And then enter my now mentor, kind of boss, kind of still wears a few different hats for me, and then instructor Robert Linville. He's an instructor of a golf school over here, close to me now in Greensboro, North Carolina, called Precision Golf School. And so I was looking around and said, I'm not getting good enough. Who do I need to go to that will help me? And I kind of found Robert and worked with him, starting with just swing lessons. But as we spent more time together, it developed into more mental game related talk. And um, the things Robert was able to do and the exercises he introduced to me that were really not even swing related at all helped me, like, kind of created the mortar that held all the bricks together, like the swing bricks and the physical game bricks. He filled those cracks in and helped me accelerate my improvement. And long story short, I had a year and a half of really good golf, playing with him, as my instructor. Um, and I ultimately decided that professional golf was not what I wanted to do anymore. And so at that point, I said, okay, I got to move on. I got to find something else to do. I got to get a job. So I talked to Robert and said, do you have any suggestions for me? And he said, I think what you improved on can, you can help other players do the same thing. As much as you improved your mental game, you can help other players improve their mental game. So let's try this. And, that was kind of early 2019 that we had that conversation. Um, and 2 years later, I'm going strong, working with a lot of doing a lot of mental sessions with junior golfers that are some from Precision Golf School and some independent of my own. So yeah, it's been an awesome 2 years. Thanks to Robert. Really, I wouldn't be here without him. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that story a lot, and I think from your experience, you've been able to now translate into a profession, and then also share your experiences, probably the ups and downs that you've had with junior golfers and adults on the mental side of the game, and I think that's so important. Now, who do you think mental coaching is for? Is there a specific type of player, or can you scale it down to any type of player?
It would be bad business tactics for me to say it's only for this one player. Um, it it definitely helps players that are going to be playing in tournaments more than just purely casual players. But even with that being said, everyone wants to play the game better. There's I don't know of anyone who says I I don't care to get better. And I also, on the same note, I don't know any player that would ever say I think perfectly during the entire round of golf. No one says that. So the with those two as truths of golf, everyone wants to get better at the game, and also no one feels that they think perfectly throughout the round. I think I think the mental game can benefit everyone, if only for the benefit of enjoying the game more, because that's a huge benefit of having a good mental game, is being able to accept things and move on. And if you're hanging on to things and mad constantly throughout the round, then you're probably not enjoying it as much. So while I would understand those players not investing in a mental coach because they don't have the same goals, um, I think it can apply to everyone, especially players like junior players that want to get into college, amateur players that play in tournaments, professional golfers that need to make a living, um, and casual golfers that just want to enjoy it more. So really, it's for everyone. I personally believe.
I mean, from my experience personally about myself and my own game, I would believe everything you just said. And I've seen it myself as well. And I think it's really important you said there is even just for the pure enjoyment of the game. Like, I've found that myself, I've enjoyed the game more over the last 5 years than probably ever in my life. And my scores haven't gone dramatically up per se, but I've been able to still enjoy myself, not worry about those ups and downs. And one thing for me that's helped is just staying committed to one thing, or staying committed to a process. And I'm not even sure how it all came about, but it's just really helped me so much. And that's just a small scale. And I'm sure from your profession, you've got so many other tactics to add into that. But I can say it's helped me a ton. So that's really cool. Now, parents want their junior golfers to play better golf. How do you involve parents in this process of helping junior golfers on the mental side?
This is a funny answer to that question is I try to uninvolve parents as much as possible. And that's that I didn't come up with that to say it's not my idea that parents need to be less involved, not more. Robert was the first one to kind of introduce that to me, and then I've heard it from all sources, and I'm sure it's something that's come up with you in your recent episodes or in your podcast and in your life, dealing with junior players and parents. Is kids it's so tough to tell a parent how to parent their kid, and it's so tough to tell a kid how to be a kid in relation to their parent. But there is a fine line between what a parent should do and how involved a parent should be in their kid's life and in their kid's golf development. And in my sessions with players, I try I try as hard as I can to say, on the parenting things, on the father daughter things, on the mother daughter things, parent child things, non golf related, I am out of that. I'm not involved in that. You should probably listen to your parents in all of those cases. But a lot of the players I work with really butt heads with their parents as far as golf things go. And it's not always the stereotypical overbearing golf dad. I mean, it comes in all forms, of any gender, any side of the parent. It doesn't. There's no one constant there, but inevitably, a parent wants to see their kid play better, like you said, and will do whatever it takes to do that. And the challenge is letting the challenge is a parent letting the quote unquote experts, the coaches, the people that do this constantly for a living with, hundreds of different players or whatever it is, to let them be the source of golf for that kid. Because what ends up happening is, in my experience and in my own personal life, is the more a parent is involved in the kid's golf, the more the kid will resent the parent. And um, so it's like advice to parents to say your relationship with your kid will be better if you stay out of golf. And I think most parents think this is something my kid enjoys. I should be as involved as possible, and that will help our relationship. And I I've learned that that's definitely not the case. And there's no absolutes. And some, like, to take it back recently, I don't know when you'll post this, but to the Masters, Xander Schauffele, his dad is still his coach, and he's almost 30 or around 30, and his dad is still his coach. Justin Thomas, his dad is still his coach. Very involved in the golf, daily, constantly involved in their golf. So there's definitely no constants, but as a whole, in general, parents being too involved or sometimes involved at all in their kids' golf leads to resentment in either direction. So I try to say, parent, let's let the kid have their versions of self-discovery and their versions of mistakes and difficulties, and let's try not to cushion them. And most parents are like, please, I kind of just want to be out of it, please take my kid. So how involved should they be? As little as possible in general. Yeah.
I think that was a good explanation. And obviously you're speaking from pure experience of what you've seen, not only just with yourself, but then also, players that you've coached. And I think involvement sometimes doesn't have to be over involvement. It can be minimal involvement, like you said. And honestly, from what I've heard and talked to and seen, I think the biggest involvement parents can have with the best influence is just overall encouragement and, just like you said, letting the child be able to do a lot of their own self-discovery and encouraging your child to develop as who they are, right? Because they are humans and they are their children are brilliant, and they can figure things out and get things done usually faster than us adults can.
Yeah, so a kid doesn't have all of the burdens and the baggage that us adults have. And to your point, kids are brilliant. They have this creativity and this kind of innocence in a way that they, without parental interference, they can come up with things that we just would never even cross our minds. So, and maybe you were possibly leading to this, if a parent can, instead of telling, and instead listen and ask questions and find out what the kid needs, and because that's something I'm having to learn as a coach of, I need to tell less and ask more. And because a kid gets told constantly throughout the day, lectures in class, whatever, parents telling them to do their chores, whatever, constantly told, 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 and they rarely get an opportunity to express and be listened to. And when it comes to golf and like post round, like if you want to get detailed with it, if all a parent does is ask questions and tries to listen to what their kid is going through, went through, it would make a world of difference, because most parents say, I noticed you did this on hole 7. I think you should try to not do that. And that's a kid just, in my experience, again, doesn't hear it. It just hits their head and bounces off. So yeah, it's so hard. It's such a fine line to straddle. But if a parent can listen more, they can realize the genius, the innocence, the pure creativity that a kid can have. I totally agree with you.
I would say for me, I've been a coach longer than I've been a parent, and now I am a parent. And I do start to see
Mhm.
some of those things on the other side of the fence, not just the coaching things, but also the parenting things. And that's helped me kind of develop who I am as a golf coach as well, and even more so as a parent. And I say, and I've said this before on the podcast, parenting any athlete is very delicate. And like you said, fine line. I think it's the same thing, right? And it's not easy. It's difficult, isn't it? And some of this advice you're giving here, I think, is huge for parents, but I think we have to reflect on it and we have to remember that. And we've got to think about what our long term goals are. And maybe that's just to play golf with our children for the rest of our lives. And those things will help us cater to our children's needs even more. So I think that's really cool and important.
Totally agree.
We're going to jump a little bit forward now from your experience. From the mental side of coaching, in your opinion, what are the big differences between players who quote unquote make it and those who don't?
Yeah, this is obviously the $1,000,000 question. I mean, I think it comes down to work ethic. If you could boil it down, and there's a million little variables that I personally experienced, and because I always had extremely good work ethic and extremely good discipline, and it took my skill to a level that I never thought could get me there. But at the end of the day, there were variables such as, such simply as like money, and you just the means to be able to do the things that you want. I mean, ultimately it was kind of drive and want to continue on that prevented me from making it. But something like, I actually never turned pro, but I did make it to college golf, which is, uh, knowing the audience of yours is a lot of people are wondering, how can we make it to college golf? I did make it to college golf. Nothing stopped me from getting there. So that was work ethic. That was attention to detail, working with an instructor, being coachable, listening to the instructor, doing what the experts suggested. Because as a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, I didn't know what to do. I look back then and say, I wish I had sought out more advice, not listened to less people. So, how do you make it to college golf? Work ethic, listening to coaches, and I mean, that I say that comes down to work ethic, where most other kids my age who went to college but were also on the golf team with me but didn't make it to college golf, the major difference there was I would go to the golf course when they would go home and hang out and do nothing. And I grew up going, I still do, but I grew up going to church. And if you go to church as much as you can, and my friends would, Wednesday night, where were you, Josh, Wednesday night? Oh, I was playing golf, and I was pursuing my goal. So like there are sacrifices in all areas of life that if you got this goal of playing in college golf or ultimately turning pro or whatever, being the best golfer you could ever want to be, work ethic cannot be ignored. So I think if you had to pin it on one thing, it has to be work ethic, discipline, putting in the time, putting in the quality time. That has to be it.
I would agree totally. Is there any exercises that you do with like a new junior golfer that comes to see you on the mental side? Like a few like set questions you might ask them just to get a better understanding of where they are, or maybe something that they can walk away with and think about. And for our listeners, the same thing that maybe somebody can try to do for themselves to just kind of help them and jumpstart them on the improving their mental side of the game.
Yeah, so a major first thing that I ask a player is kind of why do you play the game? What are your big goals? Because if the why is just to have fun and the do I have any major goals? Nah, not really. Then first of all, why, I'm surprised we're having the session in the first place. And that almost never happens. Everyone has goals. So those goals inform what we go and talk about, because if they say I want to play in college, I want to be a D1 college athlete and eventually turn pro, then how I invest into them is going to be another level up from someone who says, yeah, I kind of just want to get better. And like, okay, well, let's take this a little more casually. But a 14, 15 year old that says, no, I want to play it over here, like a good school would be Duke or NC State or something like that. And okay, you want to get into Duke to play college golf, you gotta, like, we need to get going. Like you need to step it up. And so that totally evolves the level of investment that I'll do with the player and the level of the standards that will hold the player to. But then separately, something that I would always kind of prescribe to a player, a very common one that I prescribe to a player is something called a 3-in-1 exercise. And it's something the listeners can do. Anyone can do this. And it's something I did when I was trying to turn pro, something Robert Linville had me do. And something I have almost all of my players do is every day write down 3 good things you did from today. And then every day write down one thing you could improve from today, and then don't stop there. Specifically, how do you plan on improving that thing tomorrow? And the reason why I prescribe this is because across the board, almost every single golfer tends to see the negative things primarily. They say, oh yeah, I had that double, I shanked it on hole 8, oh I had a triple on hole 16 when everything was going great. So they rattle off the bad things, and then it's like, what'd you do well? And they really have to sit there and like, well, what did I do well? And if they make it a habit to like highlight the good things that they do, they shift their perspective from easily quickly being able to see the negative things, which never goes away, I don't think, as a human. But you know, building the habit to be able to highlight the good things and see the good things and actually list them, and once you list them, you see them there on paper or on the computer screen of, I did those 3 things well today, whether it was a birdie or a good bounce back or a good workout, or I hung out with friends and I saw someone I hadn't seen in a while, or I I went and worked, I did carts at the golf course, I made a little money, whatever it is, like you did good things. And you you as a negatively biased person is not going to inherently see those good things. So put a habit in daily that will build the strength of your optimism, basically. And that's just one of several different exercises that I would have a player do, but that one in my own life shifted me from a very low self-image of myself in my game to, you know what, I look at all these good things I've done. And over the course of 2 or 3 months of daily doing this activity, I shifted from I'm I'm not as good as I want to be to I see the value of of the work I've put in. I see myself as a better golfer, and so I show up to a golf tournament, and it made a real difference in the way I would carry myself and the confidence I would carry to the first tee throughout the round, knowing that I could make up for bad things because look at all the good things I've done. That is that's probably the biggest, most holistic self-image, self-belief boosting activity that I have players do, and it's just invaluable. It's the most important thing I've done as a golfer. So all the listeners out there, do that exercise. That can help you really.
What I think is so important about the mental side of golf is not just the golf itself. Like that task alone can help you so much, even outside of the game of golf and just in life. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure a lot of the things that you do help players improve just their overall quality of their own lives outside of the game. I mean, have you seen that with players, or have you gotten that feedback before?
Yes, I have, but I need as a coach, I need to poke at that more. I need to ask players, okay, all we talk about is golf, but like let's zoom out a little. Do you notice the differences in your life from these exercises or the way we talk about things? And yes, I have noticed it, but I don't draw attention to it enough. I make things just like in my own life when I was that age, I make things too much about golf. But if my own experience is any example of the value these things can have on my life, and it's the only example I know of, which I know it's not, but it completely changed my just changing my self belief and self image completely changed my life to the point where I mean this is off topic a little, but it led me to meeting my now wife because I was notoriously embarrassed and ashamed to talk to any girl and like put myself out there because I just had a horrible self image about myself. Um, so to use this non golf example, it me building my self image using golf and using a basically golf activity helped me just be a better person completely. And I need to get that feedback from my players to say, do you see this helping you? And if not, we need to work on why that might not be because there's nothing more important because you'll stop playing golf eventually. You'll stop playing competitive golf eventually. You might not make it to where you want to be on the LPGA tour or the PGA tour. So we need to let's turn inward and like let's look at you as a person every once in a while at least. So I appreciate you kind of giving me that reminder that I need to do that. I need to prioritize that.
I think it's huge. I love that example you gave as well with your own
Mm,
personal life. And I think that's really big
yeah.
for listeners to hear because personally, when you were saying those things to list three positives, one negative, I was doing that 2 years ago for my own personal life. I stopped and I need to get back onto it. And you remind me of that. And it helped me
Mm,
tremendously. And then imagine if you do that for golf. And yesterday I asked two students who played 9 holes and I asked them, hey, what do you think you did well today? And they actually had a hard time trying to think what they did well. And then over about a 5 minute period, they started listing off some things. But imagine if they wrote those things down, like you said, and how they can actually build off of that. And I think that'll help with their confidence. So I think that
mm,
was a really good piece of advice to give everybody just to kind of kickstart us and then also see the light at the end of the tunnel of how the mental side of golf can help us in life and build our confidence as well, which is cool. So
for sure.
Josh, you've painted a very well picture for us on how important the mental side of golf is and its influences on us in the game of golf and on life. How can people find out more information about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I try to be in as many places as possible across the internet. First of all, my personal website where that links directly to my coaching is foundationsmp.com for Foundations Mental Performance. That's my mental coaching business. And pretty much everywhere on social, I'm at Josh Luke Nichols, and I try to post things from podcasts I do to to thoughts I'm thinking. And speaking of podcast, and I'm so thankful that you have me on this, but I have a podcast called The Mental Golf Show, and I interview people. I do things where I'm just talking into the mic about the mental game of golf. So that's kind of that thing that gets my most attention, aside from working with players. So if anyone wants to hear more about the mental game of golf, they can listen to the Mental Golf Show when they're done listening to Raising Golfers, of course.
I'll share those links in the show notes for sure. So, Josh,
Great.
last question for you. What are your final words of inspiration for Raising Golfers?
Yeah, to talk to maybe both demographics that listen to this. First of all, to parents, listen to your kids in relation to golf. I won't tell you how to parent, but listen to your kids in relation to golf. Listen, ask questions, find out what they love, what they need, why they're doing things, what tournaments they want to play in, why they want to play in. Just ask questions, listen. And to players, work really hard. I mean, there's no getting around the amount of time and the quality of time that you need to put in. Schedule your time, plan your time, make your time more valuable and just higher quality. There you can't be I don't know of someone who can't have who didn't have high enough quality of time. Like you can't your time cannot be high enough quality, and just put in the work and trust that you might not reach your goal when you want to, but you will reach it eventually if you put in the time. No one can guarantee when or how hard it will be, but with enough time, you will. It's like chopping down a tree. I say this analogy all the time. You can't show up one day and push over a tree, but you can show up every day and chop at a tree over and over and over. And if you get caught up in the tree falling down today, you'll get frustrated, you'll wear yourself out. But if instead you say, all right, my job today is putting in quality chops at the tree. That's all I care about. And then I'll show up tomorrow and do it again. And if I need a rest day from all the chopping, I will take the rest day. But every day my job is putting in those chops, and the tree will come down eventually. You don't know when, you don't know how hard it'll be, you don't know how long it will take, but it will come down eventually if you keep chopping. And to every junior golfer out there, that's the key, is quality time and focusing on the long-term process.
Perfect. Josh, thanks so much for going on the podcast. You shared so much with us, and I think everybody's going to take so much away. So thank you again for coming on.
Absolutely, Travis. This is a real pleasure.
All right, Josh Nichols from Foundations Mental Performance. For me, the mental game, like Josh mentioned, allowed me to enjoy the game even more, and that was huge. I'm able to handle the ups and downs much better and learn something each and every time I play. If you aren't already taking notes after your lessons or round of golf, I highly recommend you do Josh's 3-in-1 exercise and write down those 3 things that you did well today and one that you can continue to work on. And I think that's really important. Like Josh said, is we tend to lean more on the negative and not so much on the positive. But I think we need to actually start flipping that and lean more on the positive and a little bit less on the negative, but then build a plan on those things that we can improve on. Being a parent is difficult. And as we discussed, how much involvement in your junior's golf is delicate. It's that fine line. So what I recommend is constantly or regularly reflect on your values for your children and let that guide you on how much you really need to be involved in their golf. Now get out there, start improving your mental side of the game, not just for golf, but in life. I'm sure you'll see huge benefits. See you guys next week. If you enjoy listening to our podcast and the information you got from this episode, do us a favor and continue to support us by hitting that subscribe button and giving us a 5-star review. Your continued support will help us continue to grow and be able to interview some of the most experienced parents, coaches, and players in the golf industry to help you continue to raise your golfer to their full potential.